Okay, I'm standing here in the rain, Sunday, June 9th. Today I'm going to be reseeding some beans, and here's why. I dug a trench and seeded the beans, and I didn't have any compost to fill in the trench, so I used something that I purchased called well-rotted sheep manure. Just a gentle reminder to everybody that sheep manure is hot and should be worked into the soil first and not applied directly. So the beans that I do have up are looking kind of stunted and shriveled. There's another one. So I've decided that even though it's raining, I'm going to seed a few more today. And why am I doing it in the rain? Because it's June 9th. It's a shot of the garlic. I had one garlic recently come up right there from the winter, so hopefully he'll do okay, catch up. And here's my corn, which I transplanted this week. Potatoes, cabbages, and Brussels sprouts underneath their little dome over there. Three types of potatoes. The first row is early, it's a red Norland. The second one, the middle row, is Yukon Gold. And the last row is just starting to come, some of them, is my russet potatoes. And those few potatoes there are, I seeded those shallow because the tubers were pretty pathetic, so I seeded them shallow. Those were the banana potatoes. I'm going to try those. Got half a dozen of them. Here's another shot of the cabbages. I got a purple one there, and in the middle of the dome, I've got 4 Brussels sprouts. They grow the tallest. They'll grow like 4 feet tall, so hopefully that thing will be tall enough. So I've got on this section of my pea fence, I've got on one side I've got snow peas, and on the other side I've got sugar snap peas. And the long run of peas is green arrow peas. I seeded my peas differently this year. What I did is I dug a trench and dropped the peas in the trench and covered it up with dirt. Normally I just take the peas and push them through with my fingers. I found this way the germination is the same, but it was way faster and easier to do it, so I'm going to do it that way from now on. There's a few gaps in there. I might push a few in the dirt today. Here's a better view of the cabbage dome. I've got a couple broccoli in there as well, and all my different types of cabbage. Over here, it was a little bit early. I planted these out in the 2-leaf stage. I've got 2 dozen cucumbers. I wanted to wait a little bit longer, but they were calling for rain, so I just went and put it out. So hopefully they'll do okay. Onions are doing well. On the outside there, I've got some multiplier onions. I seeded those from sets just so that I can have some green onions. And then the other onions, the majority of them are purple onions. They should start bulbing up soon, hopefully. Over there I've got a row and a half of carrots, and in that section there full of weeds, I have to investigate further and see if there's any parsnips coming up. Tomatoes are doing pretty good. They actually had tomatoes on them when I transplanted them from the mobile greenhouse. There's a few hanging from that one. There's a few hanging from that one. Those tomatoes are about the size of golf balls, I guess. There's an empty area behind the onions, and that's where I'm going to plant out my peppers. I repotted them. I want them to kind of grow as fast as possible, I suppose, so I've decided to leave them in the mobile greenhouse for another week or two before I plant them out. There's the garlic. I back onto a park, and when they mow the park, they like to leave, this is actually not too bad, they like to leave wads of grass, and I like to take those, and that's what I use for my mulch. So yeah, I got 3 wheelbarrow loads of this mulch. It's quite handy. Once you lay it down, the weeds are virtually suppressed, and when it rains it keeps the moisture in. So if you back onto a park and they do a lousy job cutting the grass, it's a benefit. I've just mulched the immediate area around the cucumbers. When they get bigger, the 2 strips of black dirt on each side, of course, they'll vine out to that area. And being a vine, everywhere they touch the dirt, they'll send out small roots. So we don't want to mulch it too heavy. We want it to take advantage of the soil wherever it touches the soil. I don't put flowers in my garden. There's flowers right next to the garden. These are my favorite. They're very hardy. So there's lots of flowers in the area that attracts the bees. I purchased a number of stones yesterday, and my intent is to disperse them throughout the garden here so that I can use them to step on. I'm not packing the dirt. I'll use them like these. When you weigh 250 pounds, it doesn't take long to turn your garden into concrete. So, and I can do my weeding, harvesting, and everything from those stones. I put them like 3 or 4 feet apart, and I step across from stone to stone. I got like maybe, I figure about a couple dozen stones would be plenty to access everywhere in the garden. I threw a few handfuls in each of the tomato holes when I planted them out. So we'll see. I think the tomatoes will be a little bit more tolerant of hot manure. Here's a shot of the east side of my house. I put ferns here a few years ago. They haven't done much, but they're looking pretty good. They're just starting to spread out. That's the intent, is to have the whole area filled in with ferns. I planted this lily of the valley. I'm going to have to make sure it doesn't take over. And this other stuff here, I don't know what that is. I'll have to keep it in check too, although it's nice the way it is. There you can see this fern is spread out. There's a new one coming up right against the house. Here's what's left of my bunching onions that were seeded in March. So hopefully when we're finished using these, there'll be some multiplier onions in the garden to use. Here's my 2 zucchini plants that I planted out. They're looking pretty good. I actually have a zucchini coming on one of them. There's the zucchini. This particular plant was in the greenhouse longer. It did a little bit better. It was a little bit bigger because of being in the greenhouse, the mobile greenhouse. Here's my direct seeded bunching onions. Here's my transplanted leaf lettuce. And there's some of my romaine type lettuce. Swiss chard. And 2 types of radish there. And there's some direct seeded Grand Rapids lettuce. This here is my first stage of mesclun mix. This is the lettuce part of it. Yesterday over here I seeded the greens part of it. And that is either radicchio or bok choy. I'm thinking that's the bok choy. And then on the other side, in another little row, I've got radicchio. I have it in my head that those 2 things might benefit from protection from cabbage moths. That's a row of beets there, and another partial row of beets. What's this black fabric doing here, this structure? In behind there is celery, and the plan is that this keeps the direct sun off the celery. Celery doesn't like direct sun. It'll get woody, and it'll not be very good. So there's my celery hiding from the sun behind that cloth. And tucked in the corner there are broad beans. I've tucked them in the corner. The cloth doesn't shade them, and they're sheltered from the wind there, so I don't have to stake them. Those are about half as many broad beans as I planted last year. So anyways, the fabric cloth, it's just 3 stakes pounded in the ground and I used a staple gun to put it on there. That's just my own invention to keep the sun off the celery. One thing that you can do to try and keep the sun off, one technique is to plant them close together so that they shade each other out, and I've tried to do that here as well. In the old days, apparently they used to hill them like potatoes. A technique I've used several times for my celery is you take a milk carton like this and you cut the top and the bottom off, and then you take this and you put it around your celery. Put a little dirt up around the side so that the wind doesn't blow it over, and this keeps the sun off effectively as well. And another thing, celery likes to be moist at all times, and if you go around watering stuff by hand or even with the hose, you can take and fill this jug like half full of water quickly and move on, so it really speeds up your watering as well. Actually, one thing I wanted to share since we're talking about celery is if you're like me, I guess everybody's all excited to get stuff planted out as soon as possible. You're tired of it in your house. Celery will withstand quite a bit of frost in the fall, and it'll tolerate, I'm sure, frost in the spring. But celery, you don't want to plant too early. I know it's tempting to do, but it's a biennial, so if you plant it out early in the spring and it's below a certain temperature for a certain length of time, it'll think that it's gone through winter and it'll go to seed on you. So don't get too excited, I guess, to plant out your celery really early. These stepping stones, I use them. I find them very handy. I've used boards and stuff, you know, to stand on, but these stepping stones, with a handful of these stones, I can get in anywhere, anytime. If it's raining, I don't have to get muddy. I can weed, I can harvest, and I can do everything all from these stones. And yesterday I seeded dill. It's in the blank area between the flower box and the row of lettuce and radish there. There's about a 6-foot row of dill there. I think I may plant another row of dill right in this area here. I could put another 6-foot row, and if I have extra dill I can dry it out and keep it, or I can freeze it. Fresh freezing is nice. Here's the west side of my house. I've got some sunflowers coming there. And I've also got some tomatoes. I kind of didn't have enough room in the garden. I've planted the whole area in tomatoes before, and they grow tomatoes quite well here. Also on the west side of my house, I've got pole beans here. The white specks are paint. I recently did some work on my deck. Those are just paint. So I've got some scarlet runner beans, and I've got some magic beans. I call them magic beans. I got from the mother-in-law. I planted them in there and I don't even know if they've germinated. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, here's a shot of what's left in the mobile greenhouse. I've got my 13 pepper plants. Some of the peppers are quite big and the plants are small because of it, but I just didn't have it in my heart to remove those peppers. I think they'll be okay. I've got them in fairly big pots now, so hopefully I can keep them in here a little bit warmer for the next couple weeks and give them a little bit of an advantage. I've got some spaghetti squash and pumpkins there. My spaghetti squash wasn't coming up, so I ended up going to the hardware store and I bought this kind. I might plant it out or I might give it away. I actually bought a 4-pack. And there were 7 of them in there. I've given quite a bit of it away already. In the back here I've got some corn. This is there's 39 corn left. I actually only managed to stuff 38 of them in the area in the garden. I'll plant this out at my parents'. I planted lots because it's seed stock from 2009, purchased at Canadian Tire, so it was old seed. So I ended up with twice as much as I need. I'll mulch it heavily out there and hopefully it'll survive. So anyways, hopefully in a couple weeks maybe I'll do another update when I have the stones out in the main garden and everything is up. Thanks for watching. Goodbye everybody.